Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Fadugba. I'm joined as ever by my good friend Steve Wyss, and we're also joined this week by a special guest coming up on the show, as we have a catch-up with Henry from at Football in DK. We're going to be looking at Denmark, we're going to be looking at Sweden, and we're going to be looking at Norway this week. So lots to catch up on in the Scandinavian the Nordic region. In the football world. Steve, my friend, how are you?
Jonathan, I'm okay, thanks. Been pretty busy recently. Had a lot on my plate, but hanging in there as you got to sometimes. I'm doing okay. I hope you are well.
Very well indeed, thank you. Good to have a show this week, and for anyone who's been listening on Patreon, of course, we had our betting weekend preview show, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast last week. So hope you enjoyed that if you're a subscriber. And if you're not a subscriber, feel free to check it out. Also got our 10 to watch there, plenty of other stuff. We're going to start this week. We're going to get right into it because we've got a big show. And this week we're going to start in Norway. For those who aren't aware, maybe since the last episode you might have listened to, last week there was no Eliteserien football because we had the cup final, the Norwegian Cup Final between Bodø and Molde. And of course, that's probably the best place to start. We had a round this week just gone, of course, which we'll recap in a second. But Steve, first of all, congratulations to Molde, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. They won the Norwegian Cup Final 1-0 against Bodø, a 77th minute penalty from Sivert Mansverk. Fantastic victory for them. And do you know what? My head was telling me that Bodø would win the game. But I kind of had a gut feeling that Molde would take the trophy. And I think it's one of them. They've been quite sick of the sight of Bodø in the last 2 years, Jonathan. They've lost the title twice to them. You know, any normal sort of time span in Norwegian football, then Molde probably get 2 gold medals. It's just Bodø have been exceptional recently. And they're probably a bit sick of kind of their European run as well, which even overshadowed Molde's excellent European run last season. I think they would have spent the whole of the winter basically working out how they can beat Bodø, how they can knock them off their perch. And I think that's one of the reasons why they switched to a 3-4-3 tactic this season, to try and mix it up a bit against Glimt and basically to prepare themselves for this sort of occasion in a cup final against them. And they were the better team on the day. They deserved the win. They never looked like conceding a goal in that match. You don't normally say that against Molde. It was a really good defensive performance. Kjetil Knudsen admitted that Molde were the better team on the day and deserved to win the Norwegian Cup. And I think it's fair over the last 2.5 seasons now that Molde do get another piece of silverware. They have been a strong team in this period. And, you know, especially on the day, they turned up on the day. So very, very well done to Erling Moe, who I think continues to be an underrated manager to a degree.
Yeah, we will talk about Bodø later because we have had a listener question as well. Thanks everyone who submitted a question to Twitter at Nordic Footpod. So thanks for that. But yeah, in terms of Molde, you know, you're right. They've not had the better side of it in the title. The title race for the last few years, they've got the better of them in that sense. How big is this trophy win? Obviously, it gives them access to Europe as well, doesn't it?
They were in Europe anyway, so it didn't actually. The only thing it really affected was that Lillestrøm getting to Europe now as a result of I think it was the semi-final win that Molde had. But it's big for them, you know, to get a trophy when you've got a good team in any form of sport, really, especially in football. There's only a certain window of opportunity sometimes, you know, to actually get trophies. And if you're not careful, you can end up in sort of like a Spurs position. I've known many a good side down the years who you look back at them and think they were a good side, but they never won anything. So for Molde, obviously they had the title in 2019, which is great. But I think they would have felt they deserved another bit of silver in that period, in this sort of period. And now they've got it. So it's big for them because, you know, in the league at the moment, it looks wide open. They've not had the greatest start. So it's nice that they've got a trophy in their back pocket already. And it's great for them that they've beaten Bodø on a big occasion. And for Glimt, they would have loved to win the Norwegian Cup. I think it was their first cup final in over 20 years. Logically, I think a lot did have them as favourites for that game. At Molde, really turned up on the day, and crucially, kept that clean sheet. That three-man back line, I think, was important. And if they did create that tactic just simply to try and beat Glimt, then it worked.
Yeah, and as you say there, Glimt won the title in 2019. It's crazy to think now that they, won that title by 14 points against Buda Glimt. It's really crazy when you think about the turnaround since then. Glimt winning the next two titles. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's the first trophy for Molde in terms of this Norwegian Cup since 2014 as well. So yeah, sometimes you do get teams who are quite good but don't manage to get anything over the line. I mean, it's the second trophy for Erling Moe. It's been there. He actually replaced Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he left the role in end of 2018. So like you said there, maybe he doesn't get. Would you say it's fair to say he doesn't get enough credit maybe for the job he's done at Molde? I know they've had the money from Haaland, for example, when they sold him, and they've been quite good in the transfer market, haven't they, in terms of getting money in? But let's just have a word for Erling Moe, because maybe for those who don't know him as well, what kind of manager is he? Just give us a little bit of a insight into Erling Moe and his methods.
He's a good man manager. I've always thought that he has a good relationship with his players, and I think he is underrated. I mean, on this podcast, I've always been full of praise for him. We've always been quite high on Erling Moe when others have been down on this manager. I think the problem is there's always been high expectations at Molde, and rightly so. And he's always had one of the best squads in the league to work with as well. But you've still got to deliver with good quality players. And I think what it does show over the winter that he has obviously adapted his tactical style. He was always this religious sort of 4-2-3-1 man, but to actually radically switch it up to 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 it is now some of the time, then I think it's obviously there's been a collective decision there in the coaching staff. They needed to mix it up after not winning the title the last 2 years. Maybe it was a specific thing to beat Buda Glimt. I have noticed before where three at the back sometimes the Glimt have had problems with. I think it has kind of cost them, though, in some other games already this season where the 3-4-3 doesn't work against some of the other sides. So I'd be interested to see if he switches it back. They've got a lot of injuries now as well. A real massive amount of injuries, which is a big problem, including some long-term ones. And it's a good job they have a big squad. But Moe, I think you can't knock him. He's won an Eliteserien title. He's had 2 silver medals. They reached I think, was it the last 16 of the Europa League? Or was it even the quarterfinals against Granada, something like that? It was a late stage. He's not done a lot wrong, and now he's won a Norwegian Cup. I think fair play to this manager. He is a bit underrated.
Fair enough. Congratulations to Erling Moe and everybody at Molde. Of course, they're going to be in Europe. And as you said there, they already were in Europe. So, fair play to them. And, we wish them every success because they've done pretty well over the last few years, but not had the joy maybe that Buda Glimt have had and all the plaudits. So well done to Erling Moe. Stick with Molde. I mean, let's look at this latest round in Norway. Of course, we've got a midweek, we've got a double game week, haven't we? In terms of from a fantasy point of view, but there was a round of action that's just taken place. So I'll just read the scores out. Be very careful with my pronunciations here. Salzburg 1 Odd 0 on Saturday. Molde 3 Viking 0. Molde 3 Viking 4, which is what we're going to discuss in a minute. Bodø Glimt 1 Lillestrøm 1. Haugesund 2 Kristiansand 0. FK Jerv 1 Tromsø 1. Hopefully I got that pronunciation right. Sandefjord 1 Vålerenga 3. Godset 3 Rosenborg 0. Incredible. HamKam 0 Arlesen 0. And then we've got 3 more games coming up. On Wednesday, we've got Molde against Odd, Tromsø Vålerenga, and Vikingstrøm's Godset. Now, Steve, let's start with that Molde defeat, because we've been praising Erling Moe for winning the cup. Taking a bit of a battering in the hands of Viking.
Yeah, I've yet to actually fully watch this game, only the highlights of it, because it was on Saturday and I was out. But, I mean, I saw the score at halftime was 3-1 Molde, and I certainly expected them to go on and win the game. But they were actually 3-0 up in this match, 3-0 up at home, and they lost 4-3. Like, that's incredible. Like that, it's one of the strongest home stadiums in the whole of Scandinavia, and they blew a 3-0 lead. There was a red card in this match which did impact it. It was 3-1. There was a red card and a penalty given, and I think that certainly swung the momentum back in Viking's favour. But Molde won't know how they've lost this game. like I say, they do have some problems with injuries right now. And Viking have to be taken very seriously. There's been a few questions about Lillestrøm and Viking this week. And Viking, obviously, for them, the force is very strong with them right now. It seems like some other teams are wanting to have a bit of their share in the limelight as well. Kind of sick of Molde and Bodø/Glimt winning everything or being in the top two all the time. So it's interesting to see. I never saw this coming, to be honest. I always thought Bodø/Glimt or Molde really, or perhaps even Rosenborg could get in the mixer. But for Viking, this is a statement win to back up their 2-0 win against Bodø/Glimt. Two very, very impressive performances against the two favourites for the league. And I mean, to do it in this fashion, it's almost the best way to do it as well, isn't it? To actually to beat Molde this way, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Viking top of the table, 6 games, 5 wins, 1 defeat, 14 goals scored, 6 conceded. I don't think many would have had to be top of the league at this stage of the season, with 6 games out of 30 played. We've got a question from Chris Hilliam at Footy. And Ali Chris, previously a guest on the show. Thanks for your question, Chris. I'm going to go straight into it, Steve. He asks, well, it's a 2-part question. The first part I'll ask you now because it's relevant. Are Viking now favourites for the title?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris, for the question. And I've noticed some very good tweets and stuff from Chris recently. I think he's been doing some analysis on games, and he was a great guest on the podcast before, and we'd love to certainly have him on again at some point. So yeah, it's a very good question. For me, no. I still think Molde and Bodø/Glimt are the favourites because I just think they're the best 2 squads. But both have got certain issues right now. Molde have got this massive injury crisis, and the 3-4-3 system at the moment. I mean, they've been using Magnus Wolf Eikram as like a false 9 as the striker. They've got Datro Fofana is injured. I think he's back soon, but at the moment, unfortunately, David Datro Fofana, the Mbappe of Côte d'Ivoire, has been a flop. I've got to be honest. It just hasn't worked out so far. I'm not sure if he ever will come good. Injuries don't help. But look, if he's going to be this sort of sick note, they're going to have to get someone else, I think, to lead the line for them. But in terms of squad depth, I think both these two sides, Bodø/Glimt and Molde, are still very strong. But Viking now, for me, and perhaps Lillestrøm, do have to be considered as title contenders because both them sides have got the massive bit between their teeth. Viking especially, I've noticed that they're very serious this season. I think they've got a real hungry bunch of players who are desperate to actually win the league. It's like a medal spot isn't good enough for these boys. They want to win it, and you can't knock that attitude, can you? And I think they've started really, really well. They've got a decent bunch of fixtures coming up soon. They've beaten Bodø/Glimt and Molde, so 2 really tough fixtures out of the way already. Why not go on? I think that in the first half of the season, they could be certainly leading the league at the halfway point. And then it's just a question of can they keep going in the second half of the campaign? Remember, they'll be in Europe as well. So very good times for Viking. I wouldn't have them as the favourite, but they certainly are definitely a contender now, Jonathan.
Yes, David Datro Fofana, the man. So good you put him in your 10 to watch twice. Still not entirely sure if we're allowing that, but yeah, on patreon.com/.
He's not going to be in 3 times, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. You're just going to put him in every year till you get it right, I suppose. Is that the plan?
I've got a horrible gut feeling he's a flop. It's just nothing seems right about him.
Well, he's in your 10 to watch, so let's you can't have someone in your 10 to watch.
I've given up on him already. I really have.
No. That means you're a flop, sir. That means you're a flop. He can't.
If I'm a flop, then I'm a flop. Fair enough. But I think I've got him wrong. I really do. I know. When you just get a bad feeling about someone, I'm getting it. I really am. He needs to start coming.
He's in your 10 to watch. Go and look at the Patreon, see what Steve said about him, because about a month ago it was a very, very different tune indeed. Goals from Kassa, Brynhildsen, Wolf Eikram, Lockberg, Berisha with a penalty, and Tangen, and then Berisha again in the 82nd minute in that match. An incredible result. Let's move on to, obviously, the second part of Chris's question, I suppose. Lillestrøm was the other part of his question, and they had a good result at Glimt away. Got a 1-1 draw on a Sunday. I'll start with Chris's question, and then you can sort of recap exactly what happened. But just for the second part of Chris's question, it was actually the first part, but we're dealing with it in a second. He asked, basically, do you consider them to be titled genuine gold medal contenders, Lillestrøm?
Yeah, I think you have to put them in the conversation now. Not as much as Viking for me, but they've got an interesting blend of players. They've got some really good experienced guys like Helland and Yerman Assen. I've liked their transfer dealings with Akor Adams, and Frid Johnson has also come good for them with some big goals. They've got a good manager in Geir Bakker who had a great run at Sarpsborg before. He knows what he's doing tactically, and they play on this grass surface at Assen Stadium. They're the only real contender that play on grass, unless you want to put Rosenborg into the conversation. And I think that's an advantage for them. I don't think sides will enjoy going to Lillestrøm and getting a result. Most of the league do play on artificial surfaces now. So I think that is definitely an advantage for Lillestrøm. They're physical, but they're also technical. And I think similar to Viking, that there's quite a hungry bunch of players that they've won things before, but kind of want to prove a point again. And I quite like what they're doing. The goalkeeper, I must say, and I keep banging on about him, and I have done for a while, Mads Christiansen, he's really an impressive goalkeeper for me. Made a massive penalty save against Bodø/Glimt at the weekend. He's come up really big for them at times. Against Haugesund, he won them the game. This is a top quality young keeper. Another one who I've got him in my 10 to watch, and this one is not. I've definitely not flopped on this one. I tell you, he could go quite far. I think he's a big part of their squad. He has some a really impressive goalkeeper, and if you've got someone behind the back line like that he's going to win you points on their own. I'm a little bit concerned that they maybe have looked out a little bit in some games. Lillestrøm, if they keep this up, they can certainly be in the conversation.
Yes, and it was a brilliant ball in from Assen to Akor Adams for the Lillestrøm goal. We did actually have two questions about Lillestrøm, so you kind of, I suppose you've kind of touched on. I think they were very similar in terms of the nature of the question. The other question was, well, from Harry Nathan at Harry Nathan 404, another loyal listener. Really appreciate Harry getting in touch. He's a Colchester United fan, which is big. We're local, mate. We're local friends. But on his Twitter, he's been out and about. He's been at Moss FK and various places. Harry asks Lillestrøm for the title as well, so you've kind of touched upon that. I'm going to phrase it in a little bit of a different way, Steve. We've seen mention of Akor Adams quite a bit on this podcast and on Twitter. Just tell us some of the key players at Lillestrøm so far this season and how they're getting on. I mean, his goal, Adams, was a brilliant, powerful header, wasn't it? Just tell us a little bit about the sort of key men for Lillestrøm so far this season, because I remember going back a couple of years now, before they got relegated, you really did not like this squad. You ridiculed them, and they've kind of cleansed, haven't they, by going down to Obos and coming back.
Yeah.
How have they changed since they came back? Because last year they had a good season, and now they're looking even better. What's sort of, just talk about the evolution of Lillestrøm a little bit.
Well, getting the manager in was big. Guy Bakker, that he was actually willing to manage them at Obos level is a big thing. So he got them up that year, and really that was just about getting promoted. Early last season, he switched to a 3-4-3 system, and since then they haven't really looked back. The goalkeeper, like I said, Christiansen, is a big player. The centre back, Igo Ogbu, ex Rosenborg, I think for me is a crucial guy at the back for them, both in terms of physique and also how he reads the game, and a bit of a leader as well. And then you've got these sort of experienced midfielders like Yerman Assen. I mean, Assen's a hell of a playmaker. I mean, if he stays fit, and he has done it to Lillestrøm, he'll get tons of assists for them and also score goals. And, you've got someone like Paul-Andre Helland, who's often injured or rested out from games, but he's always on the sidelines, and don't underestimate his influence in like training and tactics and sort of squad building and that. He's a really experienced head and a winner as well. He's won a lot of things. I mean, he said some ridiculous things in the past when he won titles at Rosenborg, comparing, I think, titles to the birth of his children and things like that. But he's an interesting character, and I think they've got the most out of him. I really like this Akor Adams signing because he gives them something different. He's fast, he's physical, and he's young, and he kind of is a bit different to a lot of the squad. And sometimes you need that, don't you? You can't have everyone completely the same type of person. and he brings a lot to the party. I should have really had him in one of my to watch lists. He was close. He was on the short list. Didn't quite make it, but Songdal last season scored 10 goals, 5 assists. I know a few caught the eye, were impressed with the Obos League N last season. And sometimes you can sink or swim, can't you, if you move up a division? It's quite obvious that he's easily got the class for Eliteserien level. 22-year-old Nigerian. Looks the business to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they've had a sort of quite a decent distribution of goal scorers, haven't they? Through Jonsson, got the winner against Haugesund. Then against Arlesen, they had 2 different goal scorers, didn't they? They had Pettersson and Ibrahimai. Then obviously this week just gone, Aiko Adams getting on a score sheet. Obviously you mentioned Assen, so it seems like they've got a decent, they've got plenty of sort of contributors to goals, which is always important, isn't it? That's not just one source of goals potentially, which is good. So looking good for Lillestrøm at the moment, only unbeaten team in the league. Now let's move on, because the table looks like Viking, Lillestrøm, and Sarpsborg in third. They've got a game in hand as well. 10 points, but Lillestrøm on 14 points, Viking on 15 points. But the next talking point I think that you want to raise is a hell of an upset. And in fact, it busted our weekend preview show, isn't it, as well? One of our predictions. But Strøm's Godset 3, Rosenborg 0. What on earth has gone on here, Steve?
I can't work out this, Jonathan, because Strøm's Godset have not looked good this season. Yeah, they beat Haugesund 1-0, but Haugesund haven't been very good. They got beat 5-0 at home to Sandefjord. How the hell do you lose 5-0 at home to Sandefjord and then beat Rosenborg 3-0 at home? A Rosenborg side, by the way, who had not conceded many goals all season outside of Bodø/Glimt fixture. I don't get it. I
mean, 3-0 is like a serious result as well. It's not like a fluke.
I think the XG for Godset was below 1. But look, basically, embarrassing and shameful. That's what Kjetil Rekdal said about the Rosenborg performance, especially in the first half. Said they were not at all on the field. They weren't ready. They weren't prepared. He took some responsibility for this, questioned his starting 11. And, yeah, they missed a couple of players for this game. But I didn't see that coming from Rosenborg. They've looked quite strong, resilient this season, but that was pathetic from them. And I don't know what... I mean, the second half, they were better. I think if they got a goal early second half, it would have given Godset something to think about, but they never managed to get one. So I'm baffled by this one. There was just no sign of this result or performance happening. What can you say? I mean, how? You could have asked me this. I was really confident Rosenborg would at least draw the game. I could have seen it being like a 0-0 or even a 1-1, but no way did I see them losing 3-0. Bizarre.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. I mean, for Godset, it's only their second win of the season, of course. They've lost 3. They were kind of near the bottom 3 at that point, and like you said, they lost 5-0 in their last game. Incredible, really. Obviously lost to Jerv as well, first game of the season. Are there signs of a recovery maybe for Godset, or is this a bit of a fluke? You mentioned their low XG for that game. Shooting signs of a recovery?
I mean, it's big for them. Yeah, it is big for them. I mean, I just don't really get it. I mean, they dropped Fred Friday, which was interesting. Friday has come under a bit of criticism for his lack of goals. Brought in Salverson, and he didn't score. I think there was an own goal. And then Hover scored and Jack Ibilibo netted as well. I don't know. I don't know where they dug this. They were quite... they just came out of the traps really well. And it's a stadium where they can be strong at. It's the atmosphere can be good sometimes. I never saw this coming. Sometimes football just baffles me, Jonathan. I just you feel you can read the game quite well or predict the game quite well. And I would love to say it was just a complete fluke, but it wasn't really. It was a deserved win, and Rosenborg never showed up. And I'm scratching my head at this one. I don't know what to make head or tail of Strøm's Godset, Jonathan. I don't know whether to make head or tail of quite a lot of sides at the moment. I think there's a lot of random results in the Eliteserien. Really, there really is some strange stuff going on. There's not much consistency, and Godset are a prime example of it.
Yeah, I mean, what do you put that down to so far? Because if you look at it at the moment in terms of we've had 42 games played out of the 125, 2.83 goals per match we're averaging at the moment. What do you put this sort of randomness down to? Because the table, like you said, You got Bodø/Glimt in fifth. Haven't really talked about them yet, but we will. You got Arlesund above Molde, for example. You got Sandefjord sort of mid-table. You got Rosenborg 12th. It looks, Salzburg third, like Vikings top. What exactly do you put all these crazy things down to at the moment? Is it just early season sort of randomness, people figuring each other out, or
I think it's the best explanation.
Or what do you put it down to?
Early season randomness is probably about the best explanation I could give. But we've had 5 rounds. Okay, some teams have played 6 games, but only one team is without a win, and that's Kristiansand, and only one team is still unbeaten, Lillestrøm. Now, usually by now there'd be still more teams unbeaten, and there would be kind of maybe 2 or 3 teams just mega struggling. But I mean, the only thing I can really explain is the 3 newly promoted teams, which we might talk about soon. I did say watch out for the promotion bounce. That can happen. That's not unusual, especially when you've got a couple of sides who, are expected to do reasonably well. But there's a lot of, like Sandefjord, I can't explain them. How did they go from, they beat Strøm's Godset 5-0 away, but they lost 3-0 at HamKam. There's a lot of randomness going on with scorelines and results, and maybe it is just early season blues, but it's very difficult to get a hold on a lot of sides right now. It really is. In terms of actual match results, I've never known anything. Usually it's quite easy to predict Norway in that way, but it reminds me of what Allsvenskan was like 2 or 3 years ago, where anything was possible.
Yeah, and just in terms of that as well, like you said, the best defensive record so far is Lillestrøm with just 4 goals conceded in 6 games. Viking best attacking record, 14 goals. Worst defensive record at the moment, Haugesund, 12 conceded in 6, 2 per game average. Craziness, isn't it? And the lowest number of goals scored at the moment is Jerv, 3 goals in 5 games, but they're still mid-table. They've got 7 points, so they're definitely getting some efficiency from those 3 goals. Less than one a game. But let's move on. You wanted to talk about the promoted teams.
Yeah, they've impressed me, and I've mentioned this before. Arlesund look a really solid unit under Lars-Arne Nielsen. I actually watched HamKam Arlesund, the evening game on Sunday. It ended 0-0. Deserved result for both sides. I think the XG was quite low, and Arlesund are going to be a handful, to break down at times. It's like watching Brann. It's like watching the Lars-Arne Nielsen at Brann, when they were just this robust side who would defend strongly, and then, tactically on the counter-attack can be dangerous, look to target set pieces sometimes. And, they don't have the same resources as Brann, or the support that Brann had, or the expectations it might have, which will help. But I really could see Arlesund being this sort of nightmare side to break down sometimes. They go with 5 at the back on occasion, and it's difficult. I think they're going to be quite comfortably surviving this year under Lars-Arne Nielsen himself. HamKam have looked good as well at times. Only 1 win. They might feel they should have more, but they've only had 1 defeat as well. And Jerv, or Jerv, as is the correct pronunciation, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Criticized, didn't we, on Twitter?
Jerv. But look, their home stadium is a bit of a shithole, and they're going to make the most of it. I mean, they're unbeaten at home. They haven't really faced anyone good at home yet. But if they keep up their sort of home field advantage, then they might, you never know, even have enough to survive. Ranheim did very well first season, didn't they? But I think in the end, Jerv will drop down. I've been impressed with their goalkeeper, actually. I think he's worth mentioning. Øystein Øvrecht. He saved a penalty, big match against Kristiansand. He keeps making a lot of very good saves. And, I think they're going to need him to keep being in very good form to do well. But so far, promoted teams have competed very well. And it's not a surprise yet. If they're still doing it in, say, I don't know, by a dozen games, then I would be a little bit surprised, because that's when you can tend to get that promotion bounce wear off. But so far, fair play to all 3 of them for equipping themselves well at Eliteserien level.
Right, well, to be fair, that was another one of your tips this week. We had a poor, we praise ourselves when we get it right. We've had a poor week this round, I'm not going to lie, on the weekend preview show. You did have HamKam to win that one. So we do have to sort of, take the rough with a smooth. Not a good week for us. We'll dust ourselves down and go again. I'm pretty sure if we calculate the win percentage, we're still probably above 60% anyway. But yeah, it's not a good week for us on the weekend preview show, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast.
I couldn't pick my nose this week.
Yeah, well,
let alone a winner.
Neither of us could. So no, but tune in if you do like the sort of weekend previews. We'll have another one this week coming. Before we wrap up part one, Steve, my boys, lamentably, you know, it hurts me to even talk about this, but my boys, Christiansen, bottom of the table. 1 point, 1 draw, 4 defeats, 9 conceded, 4 scored. I mean, it's the meat man soccer. What is going on, my boys? After last season, finishing 6th, did so well for so long, even were top 3 at one point. Tailed off towards the end of last season, 3 defeats in their last 4 matches, and they really started this one really poorly, haven't they, Steve? What is going on with Christiansen?
Big problems, I think, now. I expected them to get a result against Haugesund, I'm not going to lie, and they didn't play that badly in the game. But, you know, another defeat against a side that had lost all of its matches is very poor. And if you look at the fixture list for Christiansen, they've faced all 3 promoted sides already. And the other 2 are Sarpsborg and Haugesund. So they've not even faced any of the really supposed better teams yet. So they're going to have to really start performing a lot better. Otherwise, they're going to be in massive trouble. I've said it for years that one of these seasons, they are going to get sucked into trouble in a relegation battle because let's not forget this is a club with limited resources. I think it's the smallest capacity stadium in the whole league. Maybe Jerv is a little bit lower than them now, but you know the budget here is not high. The managers work miracles and they've overachieved. Simple as that for several seasons. So we can't criticize them too much just for dropping down a little bit this year so far. I mean, I wouldn't write them off. I still think they're a resilient side, and they've only had 2 home matches so far, of which they did get a draw in one of them. So, and they are strong at home traditionally on their own surface, artificial grass. But it's worrying, and they've got some injuries in defence now as well. I think Dan Petter Ulvestad, Eliu Kohli's injured till I think July. Sigurd Kvir has got a problem, and Andreas Hopmark also has got a recent injury. So they've got defensive injuries, which is a problem. Next match is at home to Godset. Godset have only won 2 away matches in the last 18 months. So that is a very winnable fixture, especially as Godset are on the road in midweek. I mean, at Viking, so they could get them at the right time. If they don't win that, if they say they lost that fixture, then I think the alarm bells are really going to be heading off in their heads then, because this is a very worrying start.
Yes, the Owls. That's what their nickname is. The Owls of Christiansen BK. I love their club crest. If you haven't seen it, check it out on Wikipedia. Just another reason to love them. But this is their 6th season in the Eliteserien. They haven't been relegated since. They haven't been in the 2nd division since 2016. Funnily enough, Steve. That was when we started this podcast. So we've definitely been a good omen for the boys of Christiansen. But could this be the year that they have a bit of a relegation struggle? Seems like maybe at this moment in time things not going their way. Before we wrap up part 1, final little talking point, Steve. I want to ask you about fantasy because it's a double game week, and I'm going to just basically start by asking you about a player that I want to get a bit of insight from you on, and that is the man who is scoring points for fun at the moment, Veton Berisha. Fantasy legend at the moment, 17 points in the last round, 16 points this round. He's still got 1 more game to go. I mean, is he the best value fantasy player at this moment in time, pound for pound?
Well, he's a must-own player for sure. I mean, he's got me back in contention. I'm back in the top 5,000 now because I used him as one of my double captains last week, and he scored something ridiculous, like 44 points for me in one round. So, yeah, he's just he's a very streaky striker in that he gets hot. He gets really hot periods where he just scores goals. And he will cool off sometimes as well. But at the moment, he's right in very, very good form. And you can't do without him. Obviously, they've had 2 double game weeks, which makes it easier for him to score points on. But, I think even after that, Viking have got some nice fixtures. I think they've got Jerv at home and a couple of other teams who are not so good coming up. Like I said, they've got a favourable schedule. They've faced a lot of the good teams already. So Berisha is a must-have. He's not cheap, but he's 12 million. So he's a premium player. You can't fit too many premium players in your team, can you? We can get him guy for 12, but I mean, he's owned by I think 60%. 60. Let me just have a look. 60. Nearly 67% own him in the game, and it's just a simple case that you have to have him.
Yeah, you do indeed have to have him. So I mean, in terms of fantasy, you talked about it a little bit there. Don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add. If not, we'll move to part 2.
Yeah, there is actually a question I want to answer from, I don't even know how to pronounce this, Fjernetefs Rust. And his question is, what's your take on Billborn's start at Sarpsborg? And we're going to combine this with a bit of fantasy, actually, because they are third in the table. And I was looking, and I'm like, how can I get a bit of value here on Sarpsborg? And I'll tell you who's caught my eye, and that is Guillermo Mullins. Now, he actually scored -1 points against Odd at the weekend. That's only because he missed a penalty. Now, if he scores that, he would have gone, I think he scored 13 points against Tromsø, and that would have got him to maybe 6 or 7 points against Odd. So this is a team, the system that Billborn is having at Sarpsborg. I've noticed the striker Mullins, or whoever's playing up front, is getting the chances. Now, this happened at Hammarby as well, didn't it? Like they scored a lot of goals in that team, or certainly created a lot of chances. Now, he's 8.1 million, Mullins, and there's a lot of other good strikers in the game that you might want to get in. But if Sarpsborg keep their good run up, I think he's someone you could definitely consider in the team. And also from a creative point of view, My Godset's another one at 8.1 million, midfielder who a lot go for Linseth in the Sarpsborg lineup, but I think My God, he's playing out on the wing now rather than more central, and I think he's getting a lot of more chances, more opportunity for assists. But in terms of the question, I think he's had a great start. They're a difficult side to work out, but I think he's brought with him great positive energy, and Sarpsborg are a bit of a dark horse to keep an eye on this season now.
Yeah, I like that. And looking at this listener question, he looks like a Hammarby fan going from his timeline. Fjorneftex Rust. So yeah, no, thanks for that. Great question. He's based in Stockholm, Sweden. So yeah, I'm pretty sure if I was wagering, he's a Badger fan. And Billborn's side looking quite good there at the moment.
They are, yes.
Final question before we wrap up part 1. We haven't really talked much about Glimt. Well, we've got 2 more questions actually. Sorry. First one, Steve, for you is from Austin. Austin RH17. What is going on at Glimt? Things have been shaky since the first leg against Roma. Can these problems be linked back to that incident post-match? Now, before you answer it, we actually got an answer from another listener called Ivor Steinsvik at Steinsvik Ivor. And he said, yes, he agrees that it is linked to that game. But he said that we are recovering now. So I don't think he even follows us, to be fair. So I don't know how he's seen this question, but he is based in Buda. What are your thoughts?
I agree with Ivor, actually. I think you can look back to that incident and not just that, the schedule. I said they've had a brutal schedule. They've had some injuries. They've had the captain, Ulrich Soltness, is suspended. One more game, and then he's back. They've got Tromsø on May 16th round at home, big northern derby. And they usually beat Tromsø in recent years. I think they've won the last 5 straight against them. So I think they can get 3 points in that. And then they're only going to be playing once a week, or, well, there's the odd midweek round, but everyone else is in the same boat then. And that's when Buda Glimt start to come to the party. I actually thought they played well against Lillestrøm. I've got to be honest. They dominated the game. They had a lot of shots and attacks. It was more the sort of Buda Glimt that we know of. It's just that Lillestrøm got the goal, and then the penalty save was big. It was a good penalty, I thought, from Pellegrino. It was just a very good save. And had that gone in and made it 1-1 about the hour mark or 70 minutes, then they might have been able to win the game. Instead, they just had to accept a late equaliser. I'm not worried for Glimt. I think they're going to come back quite strong. It's still quite a really good unit, and I still think that they are the team to beat this season in terms of the title race. But they don't want to be getting too many more injuries, I'll say that.
Yeah, fair enough. It's not been the greatest of seasons so far, and obviously that controversy. Congratulations, obviously Roma. I think some listeners in this podcast will not be congratulating them, but they are in the Conference League final, which tells you at the end of the day the level that Glimt got to be challenging them and beating them 6-1. But yeah, good luck to Roma. final question, and this is the final question for this part one. And it is a question about Eric Botheim. At Reed Tromso has asked any questions on any news on Eric Botheim. I believe that he's still under contract in Russia but cannot play. Should he return to the Eliteserien if possible? Now, before you answer that, Steve, could you just give a bit of an insight? Who is Eric Botheim? What's he done in the past? Because is he related to Tromso in some way? Just for those who don't know, and then give your answer.
Eric Botheim was the top scorer last season, one of the top scorers in the Eliteserien last season for Bodø/Glimt. I can't remember exactly how many goals he scored, but it was quite a lot. And then they sold him to Krasnodar in Russia for, I believe, like 5 million euros. It was a real steal for Bodø/Glimt. He certainly wasn't worth that. But now, obviously, in the Russian situation, I don't know what the latest is with Botheim. A lot of these players out there have been allowed to move back on or loans, haven't they, for now? Due to like FIFA regulations. Should he return to Eliteserien if possible? Maybe. I mean, he knows the league, doesn't he? So I think he could certainly find a decent landing spot somewhere. Quite where, I'm not sure. Maybe back to Rosenborg even. Wouldn't be the worst spot, I think, for Botheim. But yeah, I'm not personally heard any news on that myself.
I mean, if he was to come back, Steve, I'll add a question for you. Where would you recommend right now, based on this table, and relative to affordability, etc.?
If he was to come back out, if I'm Molde, I'd make a move for him because I think they need a striker. They certainly need more depth up front anyway. So I think he would be a good fit there. He could maybe do Rosenborg again. He came from their youth academy, so that would maybe work. Those two clubs would kind of make sense for Botheim. I don't really think he'd want to be mixing it with kind of mid-table outfits, would he? It's someone that's was worth 5 million euros, so it's got to be some sort of decent club, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. That is it for part one. 100%. Join us in part two. We will be talking Danish football for at Football in DK, and then we'll come back for part three as well. I'll be back to talk about Allsvenskan. So see you after this short break.
Welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast, and in this section I'm joined by Henry at Football in DK. The Super League season in Denmark is reaching a tense conclusion in many different parts of the table, so we thought we'd get Henry on to chat a little bit about it. How are you doing, Henry?
Yeah, all good. It's a Monday night, and just reflecting on a pretty dramatic last week of Super League action, really, and there's a midweek round coming up, so the action doesn't stop.
I actually watched the game with you on Twitter Spaces, the Copenhagen derby, when FCK beat Brøndby 2-0, and I think we were discussing off air that it looked like that was the title done. But since then, there's been some drop points for FCK, and their lead at the top of the table is just 1 point. So what do you make of this title battle, Henry? There's not many games left now. I think it's 3 matches. Who do you think is going to win?
Well, at the beginning of the season, I called FC Copenhagen. It was basically a 50-50 between them and Midtjylland, I felt. But I just thought that they had the edge. And they started the season really strongly. They came back from the winter break with a load of new signings. It seemed like they were scoring goals. The defense was looking solid. They beat Midtjylland away 1-0. Very late goal from Kuma Babacar. They beat Aalborg away, who are playing fantastic stuff this season. They beat them 1-0. And then on the 10th of April, beat Midtjylland again 1-0. And at that point, it looked like a done deal. I think they were 9 points clear. Looking at the bookies' probabilities, we were in like the high 80s or low 90s that Copenhagen were going to win the title. So it looked like a done deal. But since then, they've won. Going into the previous weekend, they'd won once in 4 games, which was that 2-0 victory over Brøndby that we watched together. And the only time that they scored more than 1 goal in that run was that Brøndby game. But they lost 2 and drawn 1 heading into the last weekend. And going into the weekend, it was the reverse fixture. So the Copenhagen derby in Brøndby, and once again, no away fans. Copenhagen 1-0 up. Fantastic goal from Pep Biel. And going into injury time, it looked like they just needed to see the game out. And sure enough, Brøndby pop up with a goal. Mateus Greve in injury time, very well taken goal to make it 1-1. And so another game where FCK failed to win, and they now find themselves only a point ahead of Midtjylland, but with momentum very much gone. And meanwhile, Midtjylland have won 1-4 and drawn 1 of their previous 5, so they're in red hot form. And looking at the run-in, both teams have 3 games coming up, and it's going to be hard to call. I mean, I think the probabilities suggest that Copenhagen are still favourites, but it's getting closer to 50-50. And if you look at the run-in they've both got, I would say Copenhagen probably have the harder games.
Yeah, I think they've still got Silkeborg to play, and they're Silkeborg are flying, aren't they, right now? I was just looking at their recent run, and like I say, who would you personally trust from this point on? Because it's still in FC Copenhagen's hands, but it feels like they can't. If they blew this is a hell of a bottle job, isn't it?
I mean, it'd be an unbelievable story if they if from being 90% on to win it, somehow lost it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, both teams have to play Silkeborg. Copenhagen get to play them at Parken, whereas Midtjylland have to go away. But the other fixtures, I would say, probably edge it just in favour of Midtjylland. So, man, it's so hard to call. I think that we'll know a lot more from this next round of fixtures. If Copenhagen can beat or better the result in midweek, so if they can beat Silkeborg and hope that Midtjylland don't beat Brøndby, then I would say I would favour them. But if they drop points at Silkeborg and Midtjylland beat Brøndby, I would say at that point it's hard to see them rescuing it.
So the rest of the top 6 then, and that's the thing, isn't it? At the end of the season, in this, you're not got any easy matches as such, have you? You're not facing a team that's in the bottom 3 or 4. Everyone you face when you have this league split is at least somewhat of a decent level, you would think. So the rest of the top 6, explain the European positions as well. I know the cup final has some implications as well, Henry. So how do you see that shaping up?
Yeah, so firstly, that league split I think makes things really exciting, because every game has it felt like there's been something at stake. Even games that that in a traditional league system you'd think both teams are on the beach. There's actually still something to play for. So I think that's a real plus. In terms of the European places, so in theory, how it works is first and second go into the Champions League qualifiers, albeit at different stages. I think that the champions go straight through to the final playoff stage where they're seeded. So in theory, they've got close to a 50-50 chance of qualifying. So in theory, the top 2 get Champions League, third gets Conference League, and fourth gets to play off against the top team from the relegation group for another Conference League place. Then there's a Europa League spot that goes to the cup winner. Now, Midtjylland are in the cup final and are strong favourites to win the cup this year. And if they were to win the cup, that would mean that Silkeborg, currently sitting in third place, if the season ended today, they would go into the Europa League rather than the Conference League, which would be incredible given they came up from the first division, and they've probably been the team of the season. They've certainly been the most exciting to watch, and they've really changed people's perceptions of what relegation team. What promoted teams can do when they've got a manager who is full of great ideas and they've got a really exciting attack. So yes, Silkeborg currently looking good for the Europa League, and if that did happen, then 5th place would open up to be the playoff spot. So in theory, you could have 5 of the top 6 all qualifying for Europe, which would be an unbelievable turnout.
It would, and just 6th place would leave empty-handed in that respect. So in the relegation group, it looks like Viborg and Odense are battling for that playoff spot there. It looks like the game's up for Sonderjyske. I don't pronounce that right. You know it better than me. And Vele I'm terrible with Danish stuff. I really am. But Vele, are you going to correct me here? They look in trouble as well, but they're not quite dead yet. Do you see any twist in this relegation battle to come or not?
Yeah. So, firstly, I sympathise. Secondly, I've had some very helpful people on Twitter tell me how to pronounce these. So, Sunajuska and Vila are both looking like at the moment relegation is going to happen. Unfortunately, I think what's been really sort of heartening, I guess, from both teams is that since the winter break, they've come back and really shown a lot of fight. You know, haven't always got the results, but they've both looked like teams that really fighting for their lives and wanting to stay up. So that's definitely heartening. But yeah, it's looking like the gap is going to be insurmountable for them. I think Odense, OB, they've been one of the kind of success stories of the second half of the season. They look really bad going into the winter break, and since then they've managed to uncover some pretty amazing form. And I think that if I had to pick them or Viborg to take the top spot in the relegation group, I'd say that it looks like the momentum's with them. They've got a number of players who've been firing on all cylinders, so I would go for them for that top spot. And then if the season finished today and they took top spot, they'd be playing Randers in the playoff, and that would be a hell of a game.
Both these two teams just look like the epitome of a mid-table outfit. I think -1 goal difference, 0 goal difference. Both have had a lot of draws, and it feels like it'll probably go to the last match of the season there to determine that spot. There was a controversial goal, wasn't there, involving Viborg? I think just tonight, Henry, I do believe.
Yeah, so Vila were leading going into injury time, and had they managed to pull off the victory, firstly, it would have been very unexpected. I mean, Viborg at home this season have been great, but had they managed to pull it off, there'd have been a 4-point gap between Vila and Aarhus, and those two teams are playing each other on Thursday, so that was going to set up a hell of a game. But yeah, 93rd minute, Viborg got an equaliser. There was definitely a handball in the build-up. The question is whether it was a deliberate or an inadvertent handball, and everyone has their opinions on that. I think from a rules perspective, they've looked to clarify that this season, and if the referee does believe it's inadvertent, then the ball can strike your hand and play continue. So I believe that was the decision, and it might very well be the correct one by the letter of the law, but I can understand why Vila fans might be upset about that.
Oh yeah, I can definitely. I looked at that and I can see why they would be frustrated. I'd just like to remind the listeners actually that you did a couple of great interviews, Henry, on the Nordic Football Podcast this year. You did. Sorry, Vito Hamasoy Mistrati, the Randers captain. That was fairly recently, and then earlier in February, you had an exclusive interview with the Helsingør chairman and co-owner Jordan Gardner, and we're going to just talk a little bit about the second tier now, because the garden has been anything but rosy for Helsingør in recent times. It's been quite thorny and brambly, and they looked a shoe-in for promotion, and almost a certainty, but it looks that the top of the second division now is really close, Henry, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I remember Jordan saying, it's an incredibly tough league. It's very competitive, and so I don't think they took promotion as a given. And yeah, certainly since the league split into the promotion and relegation groups, it's not been a great time for them. I think until this weekend just gone, they'd lost every game up to that. So I think that was maybe 4 games, and they managed to get back on the get something in the win column this previous weekend against Frederica, or Fredericia even, and yeah, they're now sitting in second, which would see them promoted. But 3 points separate the top 3, and then there's a fourth team who are another 3 points behind. So with 4 games left, we're still in toss a coin territory, because as you pointed out, all these teams play each other. So there's a lot of jeopardy involved. So I think whether it's Lyngby, Helsingør, or Horsens, I think all of them have shown some great stuff in the first division this season. So it's going to be interesting to see some of those guys up in the Superliga next season.
There's some tough teams to pronounce in Denmark, isn't there, Henry? This fourth place team, as you mentioned, Hvidovre EF.
Listen,
we'll call them, and then
I'm doing my best. I'm doing Duolingo Danish at the moment, so I'm getting there. But I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the team in fourth. Just give me another few weeks of practice.
The team in sixth here, Nykøbing or Nykøbing. I don't know how you pronounce them. Anyway, there's three teams in the relegation group who have more points than them. So they certainly did well to get in sixth place, didn't they?
I mean, that can be how it goes. You know, when you're in the relegation group, you tend to have easier games. So in theory, picking up points is more straightforward. But that's just how it goes.
It's right. Prediction time before we finish then, Henry. Name me the two teams that will go up to the Superliga.
I'm gonna go Helsingør and Lyngby.
Helsingør and Lyngby.
I think I'm being influenced by the fact that my timeline seems to pull up those teams more than Horsens. But also, I mean, since I've been watching the Superliga, Helsingør haven't been there, so I think from my perspective, it'd be nice to see a new team there, albeit it won't be their first time in the Superliga. But yeah, that'd be good. And Lyngby coming up would give almost a local. I guess that counts as a local derby. I think they're close enough for it to count as such. So yeah, that's going to be my prediction, but don't hold me to it.
Bit of an easier one then. The two teams that will get relegated from the Superliga.
From the Superliga, I mean, I think it's pretty much a done deal now. I think it's Vejle and Sønderjyske, barring an absolute miracle. I mean, there's what is it? 6-point gap and goal difference. I mean, Vejle would need to essentially win every game for the rest of the season. I mean, it's not impossible, but
tough ask.
It's a very tough ask. Yeah.
I know you predicted OB for seventh, so now the big prediction: who wins the Superliga from this point onwards?
And I've got to pick someone now. I'm going to stick with my original prediction of Copenhagen purely because they've got a 1-point advantage and they've got the goal difference advantage of 9 goals. And I think that I think that the games that Midtjylland have, they're certainly going to be tricky. You know, Silkeborg away, I could see Silkeborg getting all 3 points in that game. I think that the fact that Copenhagen have two home games as well. Yeah, I'll go Copenhagen, but it's going to be a close one, as you can probably tell.
I do like that you're not on the fence, Henry. I know a certain someone who would be on the fence.
You didn't give me a chance to be on the fence. That's the problem.
I do know a certain somebody who would be on the fence potentially. So yes, well done there. And where can we find you on the socials, Henry?
Same old, just Twitter only at FootballInDK. And yeah, you mentioned there were a few interviews over the season. If you haven't listened already, go back and listen. I do my best to try and ask some questions that you wouldn't necessarily hear in like a post-match press conference. So yeah, hopefully there's something there that will give you some entertainment.
There you go. Absolutely do it. And there's some great stuff, not just from this season, but from last season as well, from Henry. Well, we'll have to get hold of you at the end of the season, Henry. You'll have to do a team of the year review, things like that from Superliga. So I'm sure we'll see you in a few weeks' time. But until then, take care.
Yeah, cheers. I've held back today because there's lots that I want to save for the end of the season. But there's been so many stories. So yeah, let's review in a few weeks and see whether I was right or not.
Thanks as always for your time on the Nordic Football Podcast.
Cheers,
see you later.
Bye.
Welcome back to part 3 of the Nordic Football Podcast. Thanks once again to Henry. It's always great to have him on the show, but it's always great to have you as well, Jonathan. And it's your turn now. We're going to talk about Sweden. We are into round number 8 is upcoming. A couple of games I've already played, 8 games, but mostly it's 7 apiece. And Hammarby are still top of the table, but they now lost for the first time against Kalmar. Malmö are up there, AIK are up there, and at the bottom of the table, Degerfors have got a victory. Every single team has got at least one win on the board. So Allsvenskan then, Jonathan, a couple of big results recently. Hammarby have lost though now.
Yes, of course we talked about, I think on the last show we previewed the Hammarby-Malmö game, which ended 0-0. And that was an interesting game. It was the first time that Hammarby have dropped points this season. I felt that they were slightly lucky in that game in the sense that Malmö had an injury, and that kind of, to me, I think that changed the course of the match. But they got away with a point in that one. I didn't really think they imposed themselves against Malmö, considering they're top of the league, they're flying. You think to yourself, they want a challenge for the title. This is a great chance to sort of put your case forward for why you should be champions. I just felt quite a few of the Hammarby players didn't really turn up. Likes of Salmani, Ludvigsson, even Swedberg was quite quiet, I thought, on the day. And as I said, Joey Geberge, actually, I thought he was really good first 20 minutes for Malmö. And he got an injury in the 18th minute. And I felt like after that, Malmö kind of, they brought on Abubakari, and I just felt they lost the balance a bit, and the game kind of petered out. They nearly scored just before that injury. But from there, it kind of petered out that game to a 0-0. So that big top of the table clash, as I say, ended 0-0. But they followed up with a defeat, and it's to Kalmar. Henrik Rydström's tactical master plan has beaten them. It's the first defeat, and
you did a Wisecout blog on Kalmar recently, which kind of dictated this master plan that Henrik Rydström has there. It was a very good read.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have a partnership with Wisecout, of course, thanks to Wisecout, and Kalmar's win there takes them up to 7th in the table. So, I was a bit worried because I did praise them, and then I wrote that blog, and then they lost their next 2 games. They lost at GIF Sundsvall, and then they lost at home to Norrköping. I was thinking, well, maybe I've jinxed them here. But they've recovered quite well. They beat EFK away 2-1. They went 1-0 up. They went 1-0 down, in that second half, came back with Staffson and Ron Mourinho with an 87th minute winner. And they followed up. Noah Shamoon has come into the team. Now, I think he was in my 10 to watch last season. I have to double check it. He's a youngster, but he didn't get much game time last season for Kalmar. But he's come up with a salvo in this match. And it's knocked Hammarby off their perch. I mean, they're still, as you mentioned there, they're still leading the way, but it's only by 1 point now. So, a bit of a surprise defeat, I would say. The big story in terms of the game itself, Rydström changed his tactics slightly, actually. And he's been praised hugely for the way he changed his tactics. And he said after the match, we didn't reinvent the wheel, but it's just that we've changed the flexibility of the team. He said, if you look at world football, the best teams are flexible, and by our standards, we have good solutions for that scenario. So he's really getting a lot of praise at this moment in time, Rydström, for the way he is tactically outthinking managers like Martin Cifuentes.
Could Kalmar challenge for the title?
No. Short answer, no.
No.
I don't think they've got the squad. I don't think they've got a striker. I do like Isaac Janssen. I mentioned it in the blog as well. In the Wisecout blog, I said that Isaac Janssen, I quite like him, but I don't think he's good enough for a title-winning team at this moment in time. He's very young, but I think he misses chances. So for me, no. But at the same time, I think that they're looking quite good. I think the biggest thing for them is going to be, can they keep Henrik Rydström? Because my personal feeling is, if Malmö flop this season, I reckon that they might offer him the job. I think they already did have talks with him last season, but he said he wanted to stay with his family. But he did also say he wants to manage a top Allsvenskan club at some point before going abroad. I've got a feeling, Steve, that if he keeps this going, I think all the big clubs will be looking, even Diff maybe, because there's a bit of AFK Göteborg as well. That there's a little bit of manager uncertainty at the moment already. I think that the next big club that fires their manager will be looking directly at Henrik Rydström.
Interesting. So let's talk about Malmo then. And they're a bit of a boring side, aren't they? 7 matches played, scored 8 goals, conceded 1. They're not exactly involved in many high-scoring contests either, but they get the job done. 2-0 win against Mjällby at the weekend. Got the 0-0 at Hammarby. They've got a lot of injuries at the moment, haven't they, Malmo as well? So they're kind of doing quite well in that crisis. Got a big midweek match coming up against AIK. And AIK themselves have won 4 in a row. So those two sides are certainly lurking immediately behind Hammarby and looking quite strong at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing to talk about probably is, where do you want to start, Steve? You've named quite a few teams.
I have done that. Let's start with AIK actually, because there was a big match against. AIK against EFK. That's one of the big rivalries in the whole country, isn't it? Both historically and all that. So it was a 1-0 win for AIK and a really important result for them.
Yeah, AIK sort of looking quite good at the moment. I thought the game against. I thought they should have won it by more. Actually, I felt that they were quite wasteful. I think they kind of dominated the match. I mean, the big talking point really here for EFK is Tobias Sana was dropped. Now, during the Kalmar EFK Göteborg game last week, I mentioned that obviously at half time they were actually winning, but there was a dressing room bust up at half time between Tobias Sana and Miki Stara, and he was taken off, I think, in that game, and he's not played since. He's not even trained since, apparently. There's been talks of a personal issue between the manager and player. I think there's a lot of little things going on behind the scenes at EFK. Apparently, Tobias Sana liked a tweet or liked a Instagram post from someone saying that Mika Stara should lose his job. And in general, there's been rumours that the players aren't happy with the tactics there. EFK have now lost 3 straight against Malmo, Kalmar, and AIK. And obviously, the big news before that game was Hussein Karnil, the 18-year-old Afghan refugee. He arrived in Gothenburg from Afghanistan with his family, and he's a huge talent from their academy. And he got his first start for the club in place of Tobias Sana. But generally speaking, AIK I thought were quite good, and I felt like maybe they should have won this game by a little bit more. Obviously, it was a header from Milosevic, typical set piece from AIK. I mean, they do frustrate me a little bit at times. I think they are a bit, they're not really my favourite team to watch. I'm going to be honest, Steve. That they're a little bit ponderous in going forward.
You've never been a big fan of watching them, have you? Really?
Well, good defensively, but they're very ponderous going forward. I feel like they really lack a bit of a final ball at times. I thought Stefanelli was hugely wasteful in this game. It's always like kind of that just last pass, from Stefanelli. He kind of embodies it. They get to good areas in the build-up play, and then they just play a bad ball or take a shot where they shouldn't. It's really like if you watch a team like Man City, for example, they're the total opposite. They always rush the last pass. And so that kind of was what happened in this game, really. They got into a lot of good areas, but don't finish it off. But it was enough in the end. EFK didn't really offer much going forward. They had a couple of chances, but nothing really good enough to get a point. So 1-0 win for AIK, and that obviously takes them, to within the sort of few places of Hammarby. 3rd place now, 1 point behind them.
To be honest, Malmo and AIK have never really been a great watch for me either in the last few years. In meat terms, they're kind of like a good solid piece of rump steak, very, very solid, when really you're kind of craving out for a bit of filet mignon or something. You know what I mean? Respect them, but you're right. From a neutral point of view, it's like, you know what you're going to get. There's going to be a lot of 1-0s, 2-0s in there. Ponderous is a very good word, I think, that you use, but nevertheless effective. And I'm not going to moan this week because in the Allsvenskan fantasy, I've gone with my partner bus chip. I've got a bunch of Malmo and AIK defenders in there. So 0-0 will do me nicely on in the midweek round. And they've already delivered with 2 clean sheets. So, yes, But I mean, AIK, I said for a while, I think they can be a title contender if they sort their away form out. I'm still not convinced by them on the road. I think they've had one win. That was a GIF. I mean, one swallow doesn't make a summer, does it? So I need more from them there. But I think if they can sort their away form out, then it could be a bit. I mean, this is a big match coming up though in the Allsvenskan midweek round. I'm not sure why. Is it because of the European fixtures in the summer or something? The rescheduling. AIK against Malmo. I mean, to me, it reeks of a very low-scoring match. I've seen these fixtures before, and not much tends to happen in them. So how do you see it going?
To be fair, AIK, when they're at home to Malmo, it actually produces a fair amount of goals in the past. I think there was a 2-2 a few seasons ago. I think last season, I believe it finished 1-1, I might be right in saying. Just have to double check that. But
they've already played each other this season, surprisingly.
Yeah, well, they lost 3-0.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange that they've had some games like that. But yeah, last season, I'm right in saying it was 1-0 during a Berget and then an own goal. So actually, to be fair, it's normally Malmo at home to AIK where it's like 1-0, just a solid like defeat for AIK. But the home game tends to be a bit more lively. Malmo have got big problems at the moment. They've got a lot of injuries, so many injuries. I mean, I watched the game against Mjällby, and to be fair to them, their sort of new look team did well. They broke down Mjällby. I thought they might struggle in this game. I thought Mjällby might park the bus and hold them out. But to be fair to them, Berman Savic came back from an injury, and he scored a wonderful goal, through ball from Nanasi and a lovely outside the boot finish. And also Abubakari header from a set piece. Fair play to him getting in there because he's not had much game time. He's kind of a bench player. But even in this match, I mean, they have 3 injuries, Steve. They're calling them muscle injury FF at the moment instead of Malmo FF because, Levicki went off in the 24th minute. Darlene, the goalkeeper, went off at half time, which was a detriment to my fantasy team. Gutted about that. But, they've got so many injuries at the moment. They've got Tiki Italian's been out. Solomon Reeks has been out. They've had Rakip's out. Obviously, bad news with Adi Nalic ruled out for the whole season. Really, really, really bad news for him. They've got so many injuries. Berget's out injured.
Aikite has been is doubtful, isn't he? Isaac Kiese-Tellin.
Yeah, I just said that. I don't know if you listened to me, but
there's so many injuries it kind of went over my head, mate.
Yeah, I did say that.
It's a long list. Is this one?
Yeah, they got and they've got 3 more now. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen for that game. For AIK, they've had a few injuries as well. Mikael Lustig, he might be back, but it's going to be a huge game in terms of the title race. I think that Malmo haven't been great, but again, they're just getting that job done. I mean, if you look at Hammarby, it's almost like they're squeezing every last drop out of them, and they're still kind of just 1 point above Malmo, which kind of is a bit ominous because I don't think Malmo are necessarily playing hugely well with all the injuries they have, but they've only conceded 1 goal all season, which is incredible in 7 games. So, yeah, tough to predict that game, but I think it might be actually quite a good game.
I could actually see AIK winning that, 1-0 or something. They're very strong at home, really strong home team, and this might be a good time to get Malmo with the injuries. So I could actually see them winning it at home. But yeah, be a crucial tight match, and we will move on. We're going to move on to Djurgården because they have played 8 matches this season, along with Helsingborg. I actually watched that game I think it was on Thursday. Diff 2, Helsingborg 2, and they followed it up with a 0-0 draw away to Elfsborg Monday evening. Interesting side at the moment. Things are not very rosy in this garden, are they? Really, it's not that bad, but there's a few questionable performances. You're right. The managers are maybe under a little bit of pressure as well.
Yeah, there's been a bit of I mean, I don't know if you could say all is not well at Diff, but certainly I don't think they're necessarily doing amazingly well this season. The Helsingborg game, I mean, my feeling with Djurgården is they're a little bit flaky. I mean, they drew this evening 0-0 with Elfsborg away from home. It's a good point away from home, to be fair. But they missed a huge chance from Edvardsen, 6 yards out, hit the post. You've got to score those chances. It's unbelievable miss, really, in my opinion. The game was actually stopped because of a fire alarm, so there's also, anytime I watch Djurgården, it seems like the game is stopped for some reason at some point. I didn't even know what was going on, to be honest, and I had to come on Twitter to find out what had actually happened. But everyone went off the pitch and people were standing around. But I just feel like Djurgården are not. Kim Bergstrand's been. They've got the joint managers, obviously. Bergstrand's been criticised a little bit recently for some comments he's made in press conferences and that. Kind of. I guess the best way to describe it is kind of salty. A bit of salty comments after matches, a bit like a Jurgen Klopp type thing. Where you don't get your way and then you're criticising everybody else. So they're just not really firing on all cylinders. They've had a couple of injuries themselves, but yeah, I think they're kind of ticking along. They've not been terrible. They're still, I think, trying to get the balance right of this team, but it's not necessarily, they're 6th place at the moment, 4 points off the top. They've obviously played a game more than everybody else, so they do need to kind of try and keep the pace. But they're not, too far behind at the moment, so you can't really be too critical.
No. I watched that Helsingborg game and they brought in Joe Lasoro to start, and his finishing was terrible, to be honest. I wasn't impressed with his finishing. However, I liked his movement and I liked the positions he was getting in. I think he offered more in that respect than Edvardsen. And I'll be honest, Edvardsen's disappointed me. He had a good first match, but that was against Degerfors. But since then, I think he's really disappointed me a lot. I can't put my finger on what's going wrong exactly. Maybe we were expecting too much of him, but I think he really should be scoring more goals. He's not converting his chances. I'm not sure he's getting in the right positions either. He drifts a lot, and I'm not sure they want that from necessarily a striker, a number 9 type striker. What are your thoughts on Edvardsen this season?
Yeah, I've not rated him. I think the last free show we did, I suggested that, he's talking too much. And the AIK players after that Stockholm derby said the same. They described him as sort of king in the village, but a farmer in the city. He actually tweeted after the game, I think it was a Helsingborg game. He actually tweeted calling himself a farmer, saying the farmer's doing all right. So, he's very keen to sort of engage on social media and talk. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that as a new player at a big club. I feel like he's getting sucked into distractions. All right, it's a bit of banter and it's a bit of fun, I think, but I don't think he's performing well enough to be sort of making jokes and stuff like that. It just seems to be every single game he seems to be the one doing an interview afterwards. He talks a lot. He talked after this Elfsborg game and said, he's very self-critical and he admits that he should have scored that goal, and he said he's not really playing maybe as well as he wants to be playing. But, it's just constantly talking. This isn't Degerfors, I feel like the summer transfer room, or I feel like that winter transfer room was because he was linked with so many different clubs. I'm not sure if he's really sort of just parked that in the corner of his mind and thought, right, now I've chosen my club. And I think those rumours maybe got to his head a little bit and it's kind of swelled his head out, in my opinion. Or maybe that's just his character in general. I don't know him, obviously, personally. But I just feel like do your talking on the pitch for now and then talk, you can start giving those comments when you're Zlatan, can't you? Talking about that sort of stuff. In terms of, so I'm not massively convinced with Edvardsen yet, I'll be honest, as a forward. I think he's got more to do. Then again, to be fair to him, he's got 3 goals, 2 assists, in 8 games, not bad.
Yeah.
In terms of Kim Bergstrand, we do have to talk about that as well because he actually apologised for his comments after the game. He was quite critical of the Discovery reporter Gillian Otlu, and it caused a big stir on social media. He also criticised Joel Osoro, saying he's not scoring goals. So he did actually apologise after the match and said, sorry about the interview and the way he spoke came out in the wrong way. So, fair enough. He did hold his hands up, but it just kind of gives a little bit of a hint about the way things are going at Djurgården. And by the way, maybe the reason he held his hands up afterwards was because the Friday morning after that game, that interview was actually discussed internally, according to reports in the media. The club's CEO Henrik Berggren actually said that they had a meeting about that, the comments from Kim Bergstrand, and that's never a good sign, is it, if they're having a sort of club meeting about the manager? So just a few little things that are maybe not great there for Dick.
I feel like Kim Bergstrand has had to hold his hands up quite a lot in the last 12 months or 18 months.
Careful. Just be careful which hand he's holding up.
All right. You know what I mean? This is
No, you're right.
This is not an isolated incident now. He is quite outspoken, and that concerns me. That he, if you can say things, but I don't see where the positive side of this at all. What reaction is he getting in a positive way from the team? I think it's affected him negatively now, and I'm worried a little bit for Diff. I quite like Haksabanovic. I've been impressed with his performances recently, but something is lacking on the field, maybe off the field as well. And it might be the time that we discussed that this dual manager thing, or certainly one of the managers there, might be better off putting out to seed.
Yeah, I would go along with that. To be fair, I think ultimately, I just don't get the sense he's got the best reputation. There's a lot of criticism of him on social media, and that's always just a bit of a distraction, really. And as I say, if your club chairman and your owners are having a meeting about you, you never want to draw attention of your bosses to you, do you? So, let's see how things go in the coming weeks.
Just before we move on, we stay in Stockholm. There's been a transfer confirmed to AIK in the summer. I do believe a big name.
Yes, all the transfer rumours in the pre-season. The deal didn't get quite over the line at that point, but it has been announced now this week that John Guidetti will be joining AIK in the summer. I think from July the 1st. Big signing. Obviously, Jordan Larson won't be sticking around. It looks like he will move on in the summer, and I suppose Guidetti will come in as his replacement. I mean, Jordan Larson's, funnily enough, he's been playing as a number 10. Which has been quite interesting to see, really. He's playing more as almost a playmaker with Bahoui and Stefanelli kind of the two forwards. So I don't know if that's a tactic or if Larson sort of adjusted his position since the days of Norrköping, but since he went to Russia. But yeah, I guess Guidetti will come in. Guidetti's he's a number 9, so I imagine Stefanelli might have some competition there, or Bahoui, but it's a homecoming for Guidetti. Obviously, they had the AIK are quite good on social media. They put out a video of him when he was a kid at AIK and sort of said welcome home, and very nice sort of way they handled it. I quite like their social media AIK, to be fair to them. But yeah, Guidetti will come back. I mean, at this level, he's a big player. He should be getting a lot of goals. He's been in Spain in La Liga, and he don't forget he's one of the players who helped Sweden win the under 21 Euros in 2015 alongside the likes of Victor Lindelof and others. So he's got a huge reputation. He's hugely popular in Sweden from that point of view. So, welcome back to John Guidetti. I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on, actually, because I think he could be... I mean, I don't want to be too critical of Edvardsen, but he is kind of the player Edvardsen wants to be, in my opinion. Guidetti is a proper player in this day. So I'd be very keen to see how they get on, because obviously that Stockholm rivalry, I could imagine Guidetti and Edvardsen having a little bit of beef for the next Stockholm derby.
We will talk about a big match down at the bottom of the table soon, but just a quick word about Norrköping, Jonathan, because we've not really talked about them much this season since the season started. They got off to a rough start, but they are now one of the form teams in the league, won 3 in a row, and kind of, no one still is really talking about them that much, are they? But a little bit of a renaissance, a bit of a recovery for Norrköping. What's been the key?
Yeah, I think they deserve some credit. Christopher Niemann's come in, and he's doing really well. He scored the winner, obviously, against Helsingborg this evening, just gone. And in general, I think that they've started to get that balance right. The big thing, I think, really is Rickard Norling. I think he deserves credit again. He got the criticism in the early part of the season. They've had a lot to deal with the illness of Christopher Kazani. But the biggest thing is Rickard Norling's abandoned all his ideas, and he's changed his tactics completely. He's been a sort of a man-to-man player in the past, and he's chosen instead to play a bit of a deeper, lower block. The team's a bit more compact, and they've started to get results with it. The club was not really happy, I don't think, with the season last season. They didn't really have an amazing year. They're trying to finish higher this season, and they've had a terrible start. But he's kind of changed the game model, as I say, and he's got praise for it. Jonathan Levi actually has said, we back Rickard 100%, and he's basically come out and said, he said, with all due respect to them, he's changed his game model, and he's put in the new foundations, and we've adapted to get the most out of it. And he said that this is something the players also believe in. So he said that it wasn't the players' idea, it was Norling's idea, but that the players have adjusted and that they are now playing quite well. So it tells you a lot that Norling's had to sit back, change his style, and it's worked to quite a good effect so far.
Former league winner, of course, you got to give him respect for that one. And bad start of the season, but they seem to be moving in the right direction now. And talking of bad starts of the season, it doesn't get any worse than Degerfors, did it? 6 defeats in a row, and then they were 2-0 down against GIF Sundsvall with how many minutes left? Was it 6 minutes left? Or something ridiculous like that? Not many minutes, maybe 10 minutes left in the Monday evening match, and they've gone to GIF and they've won. They've won 3 goals to 2. A hat trick, a 6-minute hat trick has been scored by Saeed. Is it at Degerfors there? Saidi, sorry. They were 2-0 down with 7 minutes to go, and they won 3-2 Degerfors. I mean, this is bonkers, isn't it? I always had this theory in any league across the world that when 2 poor teams play against each other, you want to be back in over 2.5 goals a lot of the time. They either end in these wild matches or a terrible 0-0. There's nothing in between usually. And this kind of summed it up. I mean, this is madness, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I've not seen this game, so to be fair, it's hard for me to comment. But at the end of the day, we haven't talked about the 6-0. I mean, I can't still get over that.
Yeah.
The beating that Elfsborg gave them, one of the biggest beatings I've ever seen in Allsvenskan. To be honest, it's up there with the Hacken, the 6-1 when AIK beat Hacken 6-1. I was at that game in 2017. Probably the worst performance I've ever seen from an Allsvenskan team. That Degerfors side against Elfsborg. If anyone listened to the show a couple of weeks ago, I actually called this. I said that Degerfors had been horrible. And that was before the 6-0.
Disgrace, you called them, didn't you?
So I did say I'm not going to call out some of their players, but after that 6-0, I was sharpening my knives. But fair play to them. They've turned it around. Like I said, I've not seen this game, so I can't comment. But Saidi's a decent player. He's only playing because of the suspension to Nikola Djurdjic. Djurdjic got sent off in that 6-0, and it was quite comical really because at half time of the game, I think they were 4-0 down at half time, and he punched the advertising hoarding when he was being interviewed. He called the whole team fucking not good enough, quote unquote. Excuse my language.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, he
went
just
mad.
lost it, didn't he?
And then in the second half, he just lost the plot, got 2 yellows, and he was off. So Saidi's probably maybe only playing that whole, playing a part in it because of the suspension there up front. But yeah, they've done well. Funnily enough, Steve, I think this is a huge result in the relegation battle. I know it's early days, but I think that is a huge blow for GIF Sundsvall. They've only got 3 points so far this season, 1 win from 7. Obviously, the keeper, they've lost him as well. They had that whole controversy with Oscar Linna. Degerfors had 0 points before this game. And if GIF Sundsvall had held on to that 2-0 lead, they'd have had 6 points to Degerfors 0. It's now 3-3. And for all that Degerfors have been terrible, GIF Sundsvall are not much better in terms of results. So although it is early days, I think that could be, I don't want to say fatal for GIF Sundsvall, but I think they might look back at that and end the season and say that was a really, really, really bad game to throw away.
I'm just looking at an XG graph for this game. This is on a Twitter account called @XGData. It's really good. He does stuff for England, Sweden, Norway. And GIF's XG for this game is 3.36 to Degerfors 1.99. And it looks like Degerfors have kind of fluked it, really. I think before they scored a goal, their XG is just 1. So GIF have completely dominated this game. I listened to the interview that the assistant manager, Brian Klauhart, who we had on the show a couple of years ago, gave. And he's like, well, we played really well for 80-90% of the game. And then they asked him what went wrong. And he said, well, it's bloody obvious what went wrong. We conceded 3 goals in the last 7 minutes. It seems like one of these ridiculous turnarounds, but it could completely change the season for both sides, like you said. I mean, Eliteserien scored twice there for Sundsvall. He looks like a good signing, but you can't be losing matches when you're 2-0 up after 83 minutes, Jonathan. So they've only got themselves to blame. It could be big ramifications. I mean, both sides don't look very good full stop, do they? But Degerfors will take the 3 points there and move on.
Yeah, I mean, for Degerfors, it's huge. You know, they came out of that last game, the 6-0, and it was like the sky was falling in. I think the chairman or the sports manager of the club said it was unacceptable, and there was a huge cloud hanging over the club after that. So this is a big relief, huge win to win it as well like that late on, come back from behind, very, very big win.
So just before we go, I've got to mention Allsvenskan Fantasy, a bit of a mental week. I think everyone was using some sort of chip, whether it be the part of the bus or double captains or the Lone Rangers thing. But Degerfors, next 2 games, they've got Helsingborg at home and they've got Varberg away. After that, they've got Malmo and AIK. But I can't even believe I'm asking you this question. Could you suggest someone from the Degerfors fantasy team who you could look at for those 2 fixtures?
Well, I think this is like Agent Wyss, isn't this? This is like you ask me the questions with, you get your notebook out and start writing down notes, and then next thing you know, I look at your fantasy team and you've got all my suggestions.
Saidi is 5.4 million, right? He scored 19 points tonight, or in 7 minutes probably. No, I can't. You know.
I mean, I know you have. You play more chips than Ronald McDonald. I know that for sure. Every time I look at your team, you've played a chip. You've done well to catch me up, to be fair. But you've now played all your cards.
You've played a chip as well though this week, right?
I have, yeah. It's gone terribly. But anyway, let's not talk about that. But yeah, no, I think Degerfors' best player for me is Gravius in the midfield. In terms of the games I've seen this season, anyway, he's been their best player. I do like Gravius. I think he's the only one so far that's come out with any credit. Lindell got 2 assists for Degerfors, so you could look at him for your team maybe. I like Eliteserien. I think you talked about him just now. He was in my 10 to watch, Allsvenskan 10 to watch, of course, on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. I thought that he would have a good season. The former AIK man, and he's looking good. I do worry for GIF. I think they are not getting the rewards for their efforts, because I think they've been quite good at times. They go to Norrköping this coming weekend, and then their next game after that is home to Mjällby. But yeah, in terms of Degerfors, I mean, I can't guarantee they're not beating next weekend. I still think they're a poor side. I would say that they're the worst team I've seen this season at the moment, and I'll stick by that, to be honest. So until I see this game and the comeback, I can't comment too much on it. But for me, Degerfors are the worst team in the league as of today.
I think that's it for the show. I'm just looking for some questions. No one asked you a question about Sweden this week. Come on, guys.
You've relegated me to part 3 on the show now as well.
We need some questions for Jonathan for the next
Relegating me to part 3 behind Denmark, and now this. I might have to hand my notice in. Go back to the Guardian.
Well, we'll have you on top billing next time. How about that? We'll have you on top billing next time. But yeah, do send any questions in for Jonathan. And that's going to be it for the show. That's thank you very much, as always, my friend. Thank you very much to Henry. And once again, thanks to all our patrons out there. We'll endeavour to do better with our selections this week on the preview show. But that's all pretty much I've got to say for this one, Jonathan.
Yep, thank you. We'll be back with a weekend preview, as we mentioned on Patreon. And next week, of course, we'll have another show. So, thanks for all your listener questions. Really appreciate it to everyone who tweeted us at Nordic Footpod. And thanks, of course, to Henry for joining us for Denmark.
Well, take care, everyone. Goodbye. See you again soon. Stay safe.